It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, I want to start with you this morning. I know that we'll be talking about the 2024 presidential election with the assumption that Donald Trump and Joe Biden will be running against each other again. This has caused a lot of depression and concern about the future of the country. On the one hand, people are very worried about Joe Biden's age. And that will probably even get more intense as the election gets closer. And of course, we have now a twice indicted former president who might be indicted again once or twice more before the election. And people are, these are kind of the doomers, are saying, what's the path forward? And I would like to, talk to you all about what options are available if people are so worried about this scenario.
I agree that both candidates are not popular, but that is not, a particularly unusual situation at this point in the election. I think you go back to most of the recent elections and both candidates would not be polling very well at this point, and people always are looking for some shining star to come, somebody to ride in on a white horse. But look, as I look at 2024, it's not a normal election. I think, as Judge Luttig had said at the January 6th hearings, democracy is threatened. It's on knife's edge. That to me is the number one question in 2024. Earlier this year, both of us predicted that by the end of the year, neither Biden nor Trump would be a candidate. We're only halfway there, so we still may be right. I don't think it's impossible that his legal problems, as they continue to mount, a couple more indictments, him coming under enormous pressure from Chris Christie and others in the primaries, that Trump could be derailed. And I think if that happened, then Biden probably would declare victory and step aside. I'm Biden's age. I've known Joe Biden for a long time. I think he's been an excellent president. And if he'd been 10 or 20 years younger, he'd probably be a pretty strong favorite for re-election. But of course, I'd like to see a new generation of leaders, and I know we have them among our governors, for example. We have a number of future leaders of the country. But to me, really, my main priority is to stop somebody who is the greatest threat to democracy since the Civil War, who tried to disrupt and overturn the results of the 2020 election from getting control of the government again. As Liz Cheney said, Donald Trump should be nowhere near the Oval Office ever again. So no matter what happens, I think anybody who cares for democracy is really, if Trump is one of the candidates, has got to vote for the other guy. I think if it's Biden, and it looks like it probably will be, I think it's really important that there not be a third party, because the anti-Trump vote has to be consolidated to stop him. This morning, I woke up and I saw on television Joe Biden in Helsinki to welcome NATO or Finland into NATO. 5 years ago this week, Donald Trump was in Helsinki embracing Vladimir Putin and basically taking his word over the word of our intelligence agencies about Russia's interference in the 2016 election. I think that says it all. And, we have the future of our country at stake, the future of our way of life, the future of popular elections. And the most important thing in 2024 is that we reject a candidate who refuses to stand by the democratic way.
Craig, I would like you to respond to that as well, but particularly on the Republican Party, it seems pretty well laid out that Trump will be getting the nomination. The Trump lovers will once again activate a very strong grassroots effort to win primaries.
One point I'd start with, and it's the point Al made, and 2024 is an election without a lot of precedent. First of all, we don't have many rematches in the sense of a Republican having been defeated, then again coming back to seek the presidency. Richard Nixon, lost to Kennedy, and then 8 years later in '68 came back and won. But it's been a long time since that's even happened, and so that makes this unusual. Obviously, the leading Republican in the field, Donald Trump, is unlike anybody else that the Republicans have offered up, if you go back in history, as far as I can determine. And whether he's stopped by health issues or legal issues, or people simply lose confidence in him, I just have a very hard time thinking he's going to get elected. Could he get nominated? Maybe, but here's some other things to consider. The voters today are, in the middle of July, not necessarily locked into this discussion. I mean, and a lot of people, in fact, don't really want to talk much about politics. I get asked about it. I'm sure Al gets asked about it, but that's because of our backgrounds. But even in that regard, not that many people want to discuss it. And the other factor I'd offer up is the sort of misuse of polling, misuse in the sense that good, legitimate polling tells you where people's thinking is today. It doesn't tell you where it's going to be next February or March when the primaries start. And a lot of the polling today with voters who haven't been paying a whole lot of attention has to do with name identification. They know Trump, they know Biden. Those names are the ones that come top of mind. There's this other part of this equation in which a large number of voters say they're not particularly attracted to either one of them. Well, guess what? That's been the case in the past. You suggest, can a front runner get taken down? Well, this is kind of interesting. Ronald Reagan back in 1980 was the front runner, and he lost in the Iowa caucuses to George Bush, and suddenly the race was tied. Now, obviously, Reagan went on to win. But when it was Bush's turn in 1988, he came in third in Iowa, and suddenly it looked like Bob Dole and was surging, and then Bob Dole lost in New Hampshire, and Bush went on to win. So there's a lot of jockeying. The other contest, or the other indicator that I thought was interesting when I looked at, we'll begin to get straw polls, and the press will make a great deal about straw polls. Well, back in 2011 and 2012, when there were straw polls offered up on the Republican side, the winner of most of the straw polls, actually 28 of them, was Ron Paul. Coming in second was the late Herman Cain, a pizza executive. And number eight, and winning 8 of the straw polls was Mitt Romney, who went on to get the nomination. The point being that the media tends to focus on these bits of information that are coming to us, now, but voters are the ones who will determine when they go to the polls, who's on top. And the races, these primary races, are not necessarily run on the same set of national issues that most of the pundits and the press are talking about now. And when it comes to primaries, boy, they start fast. Iowa has talked about moving its caucus up to January 15th. On March 5th, you have large states, California, Massachusetts, North Carolina, Texas, Virginia, all among a group of states that are holding primaries. And just having to campaign in that many states and fund your organization and fund your advertising is a challenge. So I still think that there's a lot of sorting out to do. I've said before, I think when it comes to President Biden, the question is not how is he doing today, it's how's he doing when he gets into these contests in February and March. And it won't take a lot for suddenly people to pop up and challenge him, and that may change the nature of that. And if Trump gets indicted again, it won't take a lot for some of the Republicans to consolidate. There are now, as you know, a lot of them running to consolidate around one or two challengers, and perhaps Trump won't be doing as well. So I still, I'm with Al. I'm not ready to let go of our prediction. Time will tell, and voters will spend a lot more time in the months ahead, especially as we get into the first third of next year when these primaries are running and the primary campaigns are running. They'll be digesting a lot more information about and thinking about the issues that affect them, not just some of the chatter at the national level, if you pardon the term, by one of the chatterers.
Al, is there an Obama waiting in the wings? We all remember when he came in very late in 2008 with Hillary Clinton way up in front and changed politics forever. Is there a scenario that could get us to a different position here?
First of all, I'm not sure that you're really correct about Obama coming in late. I believe he came in pretty early in 2007. But there's no question he was way behind. I mean, the best example of somebody coming in late was really Bill Clinton, because we had spent most of 1990 and 1991, while I was chairman of the Democratic Leadership Council, going around the country and developing the agenda, which we ran on in 92. And it wasn't until 13 months before the election in October of 1991 that he announced. So yeah, you can come in late. And Craig's scenario is entirely possible. In 1968, Lyndon Johnson didn't campaign in New Hampshire, and Gene McCarthy went up there and he didn't win it, but he came in close, a close second. Excuse me. And in New Hampshire, perception is often more important than actual vote count. What was it? 10 days later, Johnson announced that he wouldn't run. So I think a lot of that's possible. I suspect that Trump is much more vulnerable than we probably think. His numbers are high, and there's no question he has a solid base. But that base isn't even half of the Republican Party. It's probably a third of the Republican Party. It's really never been tested in the sense that he's been defeated. He knows nothing about Iowa. And he's been making a fool of himself out there. I mean, he doesn't know the difference between a Dairy Queen blizzard and a snow blizzard. I think it's entirely possible, as Craig has given examples, that somebody else sneaks up and wins Iowa. And then what happens when there's a prick in that balloon? I think so. I think it's not entirely certain. There are terrific candidates out there, in my view. I'm sure Vice President Harris would be a candidate, but Governor Gavin Newsom of California, who I've talked about before, I think would be a superb candidate. There are other governors as well who I think would be strong candidates. And in today's world, you have the capacity to get known very quickly And and my guess is that most governors could raise money they need. So that's possible, but the truth is none of that's going to happen as long as Biden is still a candidate. I just like to, one observation, Craig said that it's not often that a losing Republican candidate is again a candidate for president. He gave an example, Nixon. How did that work out?
Craig, you have the last word.
Well, I liked your question. I did go back a little bit and look at this. Can somebody kind of come from behind? And there's a real irony in this one. But in the 2008 elections, presidential elections, in polling in March of 2007, Republicans and Republican-leaning independents overwhelmingly favored one candidate, 44%, coming in second. The second candidate with 20%. The one with 44% was Rudy Giuliani. And New York Times headlines and others said Rudy Giuliani has locked up the lead for the Republican nomination. And of course, John McCain slowly ate away at that and became the nominee. In fact, in that same poll, 64% said that Giuliani was either Republicans said that Giuliani was either their first or second choice. And I guess that just reiterates the fact that the media makes a lot out of these early, almost beauty contest-like type polls, and they'll make a lot out of straw polls. But it's not until the candidates face the electorate and then they face the consequences that we're really going to know. I will say, and I know Al agrees, this is an extremely important election. People should pay attention early, and absolutely go out and vote, because, honestly, the only way to deal with some of the concerns you have is to go out and cast that vote. And I do think if that happens and we get a large turnout and a clear winner, we'll be far better off.
We have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.